If you are at your wit's end hearing Fitspo influencers telling you to eat less and move more, you're in the right place today. I have a guest with me, Sarah Kramer, who is a registered nurse and a mother of 2 daughters. But that's not why I invited her today. I invited her today because she is a fitness professional and body image coach who, in my view, really understands the importance of uncoupling our conditioning about our body, about our size, about food and fitness, and what it, quote, is required to look like to pursue health. And she works with women, specifically women who are looking to make these changes, sometimes in the face of eating disorder recovery or even just healing from a long history of chronic dieting. But that's what we're going to talk about today is how we can view fitness and exercise favorably, healthfully, and how, we have some skills that Sarah will teach us how to incorporate this in a way that feels good and is sustainable and promotes health. So buckle your seatbelts. Here we go on episode 85 of the Health Can't Wait podcast. I'm glad you're here.
The number you have dialed has been changed.
Y'all, I'm changing, you're changing, and we are changing our cultural and clinical obsession with size right here. I'm Dr. Maggie Landis, a physician, public health nutritionist, and health at every size educator. And we're doing the hard work here, friends. This podcast is going to challenge everything you think you know about health, nutrition, diets, and weight. I invite you to come for the science and stay for the sass. We are getting this done together because health can't wait. Well, Sarah, hello. Welcome to the Health Can't Wait podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. And I'm so excited about this conversation because I think we collectively, in this space, spend a lot of time talking about food. And we can talk about food if you want. I love food. But I really see you as an expert in disassembling this belief about fitness and what it has to look like and what it means, and are we doing it, quote, right, and all the things. And so I'm happy that you're here to, lay some truth to some of these issues about fitness in a weight inclusive, non-diet way.
100%. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. It's a good conversation to have.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to start. I ask everybody, and I want to say you're also a registered nurse, and I love talking about health professionals, about weight stigma in the health professions, but that's not exactly the angle we're going at today. But you do have that point of reference. I want to make clear everybody understands that. But you have a history yourself of having an eating disorder. And then also, I understand in recovery from that, really for a long period of time, struggling with over exercising and a lot of body image issues related to fitness. And I am curious if you're comfortable sharing part of that story and then how you landed in this space, in a sort of body inclusive, intuitive eating space, because as you know, that is not the norm in the fitness industry. Absolutely.
No, it's not. So my story begins with me having an eating disorder as a late teen, and that lasted for a period of time. And once I recovered from the eating disorder, I went into a decade of disordered eating habits and over exercising and terrible body image. And it was exhausting for me, but I didn't know how to stop. It was a comfort zone type of thing. And I wanted to stop, but I didn't know how to stop. And then in my mid-20s, I had our first child. A couple of years later, I had our second child. And as they were toddlers, I was getting to this point where I was like, they're going to start hearing what I'm saying and they're going to start speaking. And I don't want them to go through the same things that I have gone through. And I don't want them hearing mommy speak poorly about herself or to pick up on some of the habits that I have been engaging in for a decade or more. And so my kids were really the driving force behind me stopping dieting and getting a healthier relationship with food and exercise and my body. And it definitely wasn't an overnight thing. It was a work in progress, but I started taking baby steps, and each day, each week, each month, each year, it just got a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And the healing never stops with those kinds of things. It's
Sure.
always kind of a continuous thing, but I am light years from where I once was.
Oh, I bet. And so you having children, particularly having daughters, is a major motivator for a lot of women because we all, I'm speaking for a lot of people, like started having these issues so young. I mean, young, grade school type young. And we see our own children as, a 6, 8, 10-year-old little girl. That is like a child. And we
Yeah.
don't want them to experience that. But I'm curious, something you said about how you knew you wanted to stop. And I guess when you say stop, you mean like the disordered behavior and stuff, but you didn't know how okay. And I'm curious about that because a lot of people I think don't even have that much insight, like they don't even realize they need to stop. And I wonder if did somebody kind of plant that seed in you, or you just knew that, how do you get to that place? Even I think some people are one step not even there yet, like recognizing that it is disordered. So could you help us through a little bit of that maybe?
Sure. For me, it was that I knew I was restricting my intake. And I had been doing that for so long, and my energy was low and my mood was all over the place. And I think you oftentimes get to this point where you're just exhausted to be thinking about the calories or how much you're eating and not enjoying going out for a meal or things like that. And so that was one part of it for me. The other part of it was that I was obsessed with the scale and I was stepping on the scale multiple times a day. And my mood
Oh
for the
my word.
day, my mood for the day would be based on that number. And it just got so old. And so in addition, I was also experiencing burnout with exercise. It was no longer this thing that I enjoyed and that made me excited. It was a drag. And so all of those things combined made me realize that something had to change.
Right. So I talk about all the time. I'm speaking for a lot of people that have misinformation, but and I'm including health professionals, really condition people to believe that, there's calories in, calories out. Like basically you eat food and then you move your body. And it's this like fourth grade math problem, one goes positive, one goes negative. Why is that so messed up? I would like to hear your explanation of that. I talk about this all the time, but I think, having somebody else say it, particularly from a fitness lens, might be useful.
It comes to this point where you feel like it's a punishment, where it's all a punishment. Like exercise isn't this health promoting thing. It is a way to burn off whatever you're taking in. And we need energy, and the food that we consume wasn't meant to be burned off in a gym or whatever. And so it creates this lack of trust with ourself and with food and with movement, where it just becomes so confusing. And the fact is that some days our needs are more and some days our needs might be less, and learning to trust that and know that your body gives you these signs and these cues, and it's okay. We don't need to be doing high intensity workouts every day. It's not good for our body. It's very stressful and can be taxing. So when you lower the intensity and know that, hey, today I can choose movement that is not so impactful for my joints or that is less intense, that's okay. That's part of the process and giving yourself permission to do so.
Right. And I will say from my own disordered past, like it was almost kind of like a race to the bottom. You're like, well, if I'm trying to make this math problem like the most negative possible, right? Because that's how we're going to lose weight, was the belief. So it was like, well, if I just restrict a little more on the inside and I just put a little more effort on the exercise part, then like the equation's going to turn in my favor. And it's so, I don't know what, it's just this control thing of like, if I can do it a little bit, then I can do it like a little bit more. And then I can do it a little bit more than that. And
yes,
yeah,
it consumes your thoughts.
Yes, because it's never enough. I mean, the bottom line is it's never enough. And the results are never enough either. Because yeah, go ahead.
Well, then the problem is that the amount you're eating oftentimes gets less and less and less. And so then you're at a point where you're just like lacking in so many different things. And when you're just thinking about, okay, I ate this, so I need to go do this kind of movement, then it's just this energy zapping thing. And you don't have space mentally, emotionally, physically for anything else.
Yeah. And I think it really, we need to get away from the idea that there's a end point, like there's a goal, and I'm not just talking about weight, but even with our fitness abilities, that we're in a certain quote shape, whether that's a physical shape or some function, and then we're there. We've like arrived, because the truth is our bodies are going to change over time. So even if you were to achieve that endpoint, when you're 30 or 40 or whatever, that is very likely not going to be realistic 10 years later, 20 years later. We're always going to be disappointing ourselves. We hold ourselves to this completely unattainable standard. So when you're working with your fitness clients, what is some of the ways that you help them find motivation, measure progress, continue to kind of keep their head in the game, knowing that, there's not a singular destination of what this fitness thing has to look like?
Sure. I always encourage them to think about, we hear about the why and all of those things, but it's really important, because when you really dig down deep and you look beyond what you look like and the aesthetic stuff, what is the reason you want to do XYZ? Why do you want to run? Why do you want to lift weights? So when you break it down more, then it's like, okay, that's going to be your driving force. That's what's going to motivate you on those days when you feel like your motivation is just in the gutter. So thinking about, okay, is my reason because I want to be able to go outside with my kids and hit the volleyball around and not feel so short of breath? That can be part of your why. And knowing that progress, whatever it may be, is a feeling. And it's that feeling that's going to keep you coming back each time. So when it's not tied to just an aesthetic thing, or if it is tied to an aesthetic thing, you're going to be disappointed so often, because people want change and they want change now. But the fact of the matter is that change can look all different kinds of ways. And so when we look beyond the scale or our body, we're able to tap into those feelings. And so it's knowing that it's going to look different for everybody, and it's supposed to look different for everybody. And as you age, and just in general, the body was meant to change. I mean, each decade brings something different. And so your body is going to change, and accepting that and knowing that helps you understand that, maybe this year I'm able to strength train and lift this amount, but next year it might be different and it might be less. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different. And knowing that you need to listen to your body and honor that is huge.
Yeah, because I think when we are looking for an aesthetic, and a lot of women, I mean, they, unfortunately, this is what we see in marketing for, fitness classes, for gyms, for trainers. It's like, if you do this, you will look like this. Well, that, first of all, that's not true. We could all do the same thing. We could take 100 people and do something super intense, like marathon train them or whatever. They still wouldn't even look the same. They just, there's body diversity. That's like a real thing. I think, overlook a lot, but, yeah, that is not a durable, like, goal, because, as you said, even if you can get close to what you think your quote ideal shape or whatever is physique, it's not gonna stay that way. I mean, bad news for everybody. Like, when you're 70, you're not going to look like you're 25. Like, that's just, that's how the world, as much as we don't want to turn into our parents, like, we're going to turn into our parents. Right.
Yeah.
But, and I think also the way that you break it down, talking about, like, something I hear is people say, like, oh, my joints hurt, I need to lose weight because my joints hurt. It's like, okay, can we just stop with the, like, let's just stop with the joints. Like, your joints, your knees hurt, let's, for example, then, like, what are some things we can do that might reduce your knee pain? And there's a whole list of things. And whether or not your body changes in the actions of trying to adjust the knee issues, like, it's kind of like irrelevant at that point, because the point was you want your knee pain to go away. And, that's something. The other thing too is that those goals, not only are they realistic and they're, tangible, they can be way more short term. I mean, you can, say, oh, my back hurts, and you can stretch a couple times a day for 2 days and improve something. Like, we're not talking like you have to do a program for, like, months and months and months. So do you find that gives your clients a little more early wins, I guess, to keep them in the game?
Yes, it does. It's like those attainable things and things that you can see within a workout. I mean, you can wake up one morning, be in a foul mood and think, oh, I don't want to exercise, whatever. And then you remember, like, oh, I'm doing this because of that feeling at the end. And you get through your workout, maybe it was hard or whatever. And then you get that feeling and your mood starts to lift and you feel empowered and you feel strong and you feel confident and you feel like, okay, I can do this. I remember how this feels, and that's going to carry me into tomorrow. And so that is one of those, like, quick win type things and something to celebrate.
And it can be small. I mean, somebody might get relief of stiffness or elevation of mood or whatever after walking for 10 minutes. I mean, it can be, we make stuff out that if it's not some big production and we're not, like, wearing Lycra and, like, sweating through our clothes and all this stuff, that it doesn't count. There's no benefit to it. And that's absolutely not true.
No. And the thing is that, maybe somebody is really stiff and their joints are bothering them because they're sitting a lot of the day, or they're sitting in a chair at work, and maybe just some simple stretching or range of motion type stuff, or getting up every hour and just walking a little bit could help some of that stiffness. It doesn't have to be, like you said, this huge thing. It's those little things a lot of times that can make such a big difference.
Yeah. And that's actually that's what the science has backed up too. And not even just, we're talking a lot about, like, the physical body and joint pain and flexibility, but even with blood pressure and blood sugar regulation and stuff. Just the point is that the closer a person is to completely sedentary, that's where the problems creep in. There's not, like, a magic number on the top end that's like, in order to improve your blood pressure, blood sugar, or whatever, mood, you have to do this minimum amount. It's just like, let's all take one tiny step away from totally sedentary, and that's something that everybody can do a little bit. I mean, like you said, even if you're sitting in a chair and it's a matter of rolling your ankles to keep blood flowing to your calves while you're sitting at your desk, or something so simple, don't discount the little bits of movement we can sprinkle everywhere, right?
Yes. And things aren't one size fits all. Fitness is not one size fits all. And what one person enjoys, another person might despise. And so when it comes to movement, you don't need to do things like everybody else. And when you start to think about why you're moving your body, then you start to realize, yeah, I can do things that I enjoy and things that make me feel good. And so a lot of times, like, we often think that, oh, a workout in quotes has to be me being drenched in sweat, doing burpees or whatever. But in reality, moving your body in some fashion, like mowing the yard, working in the garden, going for a walk, playing catch with the kids, all forms of movement. And so it doesn't have to be like this certain thing. It can look different all the time.
Right. Well, and I think that's a lot of the problem in the sort of branded fitness space is that there's all these plans. Like there's
Yeah.
this plan, there's this app, there's this, it's all about like somebody else prescribing how much movement, what type of movement, when it has to be done, and that's totally antithetical to what really works, and so it's I think people don't realize they have permission to
Mhm.
make it look the way they want, and there's no minimum amount that quote counts for something. But one thing I want to talk about real quick is the problem with fitness professionals not acknowledging their body privilege and their size privilege openly. And I don't, if you are in a slender, idealized sort of, muscular physique, it's not like you shouldn't be training people that are in larger bodies. I think that's not fair to say that. I don't really believe in that, but I do think there's some accountability for recognizing and verbalizing to your clients that like we're doing this for all these other reasons that you've been talking about, and not because in a month or 6 months you're going to look like me. Do you see that changing at all, or do you still think this is, I mean, we see more and more kind of people speaking up, and it may just be what I see because I'm curating my own experience on social media and stuff, but it's a super toxic space.
It is. It's very toxic, which is unfortunate. We're just not there yet. And I think more of us that speak out in a way that's respectful and honoring people, but also firm in our beliefs and the science as well. The more people are really going to come around to knowing that just because one person looks one way doesn't mean that they're right or wrong, but also understanding that just because you're doing the same thing doesn't mean that you're going to look like that, and being okay knowing that your body is different. And there's tons of privilege within fitness culture, and often people forget that genetics play a huge role in our body and what it's capable of, and the predisposition to various things. And so looking at someone and assuming something, or looking at them and having this expectation that you're going to be just like that, it's unrealistic. So if we could collectively wrap our minds around focusing on ourselves versus somebody else, that's going to help so much.
Right. And I think it's really, I think it's really irresponsible for trainers and gyms and fitness, entrepreneurs and influencers to not acknowledge that. In fact, even to go a step further, not only not acknowledge that, they have some body privilege that is genetically determined and determined by their socioeconomic status and determined by their other, social, environmental influences, but they use their body as like the marketing, like, the
That's
whole,
it.
like, my body is the business card. Like, I've even heard that, I'm sure, is like really irresponsible, I feel like, because that is just going to play into this belief that they're, I like to say, like, N equals one experience. They did this and this is what they look like. So therefore that applies to everybody. And that's really just pretty ignorant. It's a
It
pretty
is.
ignorant point of view. And, I hopefully people like you speaking out, training in a different way, being vocal about, your beliefs and how everybody can participate in fitness if they wish to do that. I hope we start to change it. I will say I go to a Planet Fitness, and this is not a commercial for Planet Fitness, but they're the most like inclusive gym environment that I've ever been in. I've been to lots of other brands of fitness that was like a, what I'm talking about, like a meat
Yes.
locker and the bros with the like ripped up tank tops and the jugs of gallons of water, walking around like looking at themselves in the mirror. This Planet, and it may just be this one that I'm at, I have no idea if this is like a Planet Fitness sort of culture, but there's people of all ages, of all body types, using equipment, learning to use equipment, and they're not like ashamed of like asking for help if they're not sure how something works or whatever. And then there's also people there that are extremely fit, that are, training at really high levels. And it doesn't seem to me, at least the times I've been there, that anybody's really cares what anybody else is doing,
And
which
that's
is,
the beauty of it.
yeah,
That's
that's
wonderful.
right. Because then it doesn't, I don't know. It's just takes this, we don't need to compete with other people. We do so much already competing with ourselves, which is hard enough, that to be able to go in and explore and experiment with stuff. And I'll stand there and like have to read the little instructions on the machine, or like there's an app, it's a real high tech, you can like scan your app and it shows you a video of the person doing it. But like, I'm not embarrassed that I have to sit there and do that. Or I put weights on and I lift one and I'm like, oh no, that is way too much. And so then I like have to go, go down and just, I'm not discouraged from participating. And that's how I wish more people felt.
I think, yeah, that's such a great environment that you can be in. And I want so many people to experience that too, because when you're maybe starting to exercise and incorporate that into your life, it can be intimidating and overwhelming, and you're not sure what you should be doing or how much you should, weight you should lift. And it's all figuring out what works for you and your body. And so a lot of times you see, people sharing how much they lifted, and then someone else is like, but I can only lift 5 pounds. And so then they feel bad. But instead of feeling bad, I want people to know that, yeah, you're lifting 5 pounds right now. Last week, you weren't lifting anything. And so we all start at this place, this baseline, and then we can progress and we can do things differently. But if we just encourage one another and feel like this is a place where everyone is welcome, that's just so huge. And I want
Right.
people to feel that.
Yeah. And I will give the caveat that you don't have to even go to a gym or belong to a gym at all to move your body. I personally like the environment of the gym. Some people are totally averse to that. They would rather be in their homes working out. So you have the thumbs down. Sarah's like the non-gym person. I would rather go to the gym than do something outside. Just my own, and other people are very different than that. So just keeping an open mind, being flexible, being gentle with yourself, knowing that everything is helpful to, elevate your mood, improve your health. I think that's just something to keep in mind, and particularly to keep in mind if you are training other people, if you're a fitness professional, you're, working in these environments, taking on clients, is to really that mindset piece we've got to get away from I know I've been watching your Instagram, this like never miss a Monday. Like that is so awful. I mean, it's just such an awful mindset. And if y'all haven't followed Sarah's Instagram, you follow, because she interviews with this little plastic pink microphone that's I'm sure belongs to one of your daughters. You're like,
Yes.
have you missed a Monday? And just really, it's a comical way, but really the message is like apropos that like we've got to just be kind to ourselves.
Yes, there's so much pressure. And
so much pressure.
It's like, you know what? Maybe you had plans to work out on Monday, but maybe Monday rolled around and it was just a mess and it didn't happen. It doesn't mean that your week is going to be terrible. Just go with the flow sometimes and it's going to be okay.
Yes, exactly. So I have a new segment here on my show called Truth or Trash. And I've got a good one for you. I picked this out just for you today because I'm not sure if it's a complete truth or a complete trash. That's the interesting part, is it doesn't have to be either or. It can be like a little bit of both. But the truth or trash today is wearable fitness trackers. Okay. Apple Watches, Fitbits, all that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts on people using those?
My thought is that it can become obsessive. And I don't think everybody realizes how much they're checking their fitness tracking watch until it's brought to their attention or someone else mentions it. And then they're like, wow, I am looking at my step count or my activity level or all of that a lot throughout the day. For me personally, I was noticing last year that I was starting to become obsessed with the step count and thinking, oh, if I don't get to 10,000, this arbitrary number, I haven't moved enough. And so I was like, nope, I am going to take my watch off and I'm not going to wear it during the day. And I thought maybe I'd struggle with that a little bit. No, it was easy. And maybe you might, somebody else might struggle with it a little bit, just that habit. But you can always wear it one day, take the next day off, wear it another day. But for me now, I just wear my watch during workouts because I track my heart rate. So then I can gauge if I need to scale back or if I have room to do a little bit more if I want to. So right now I'm not working out and it's sitting over on the dresser.
Yes. Well, and that is, I agree with you that there is some utility. The heart rate feature is useful. I use mine if I'm going for a walk outside. I use it simply to look at the mileage and the time, only to gauge my own sort of speed, and not like I'm not like writing it down and like, oh, this is good or bad, but it's like, okay, this lap that I make around my neighborhood is like 1.75 miles, and it's like, okay, I can do that this week in 25 minutes, and then next week maybe it took 24, maybe it took 30. It doesn't matter. It's more of, to me, a fascinoma, but I can see how that's a real slippery slope to become like an obsession, as you say. Not to mention those things are horrifically inaccurate.
Yes. And it's just like the machines at the gym, people.
Oh my gosh. I used to live and die by those.
Yes. And they're so inaccurate. And so it's like, let's not base what we aren't eating or how we should or shouldn't move based on this, electronic device that's an inch long or whatever,
Well, and I remember back in my very disordered eating and fitness was not a huge part of my life, but I did at one point have a gym membership in my 20s. And I remember the calorie count that like pops up on the treadmill or the stationary bike or whatever, that would determine like how much salad dressing I put on my lunch. I mean,
yes,
that is, to even admit that is like, it sounds nuts, but I just want to normalize that. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like still doing that. Like if I don't get over X number of calories on the treadmill, then I don't allow myself to eat dessert or a salad dressing or a Coke or whatever it is, like it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Not
And
at all.
it's miserable. It becomes miserable.
It's miserable because then you don't like the moving or the eating.
Exactly. And that's sad. I feel bad. I mean, I look back and I did the same kind of stuff. And now I cringe about it, but I know that there's so many people out there that are doing that. And we just want to help overcome and work through those thoughts, because on the other side is like living and enjoying food and enjoying exercise.
Yeah. And it's
So,
interesting. It does not seem like it's true, but the less you try to control it, you actually are more likely to take on truly health promoting behaviors and have some pleasure in doing them. Like I like going to the gym now when I'm not keeping track of anything. I'm not on a plan. I'm not on a schedule, more than when I went to the gym with this real rigorous, like, mark your calendar type thing. If people just stop white knuckling it a little bit, I think there's a whole world out there. So I am so appreciative of your time today. And if you would let everybody know where they can find you, because they've got to watch you interview your daughters with the pink plastic microphone on Instagram.
Yes, on Instagram, my handle is at I am Sarah Kramer, and also my handle on TikTok.
Okay, fabulous. And I will put the links to all that in the show notes so people can find you. And I appreciate your time so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Maggie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful you joined me today. If you're liking the science and the vibe here, I hope you'll tell a friend or two about this podcast. You can also follow me on social media at Maggie Landis MD, or check out everything that I offer and everything I do at my website, maggielandismd.com. The solution is us, my friend, because health can't wait.